exceptions. The attorney leading the lawsuit says the goal is to give the public access to beaches between low and high tide marks without harassment.
All right, Bob. Well, thank you for that introduction. My name is Phil Chafing, and I am the project manager for the Stantec team that is really excited to be working with the City of Saco on this comprehensive plan. Some of you may remember from our January public meeting and kicking off this process and getting started. We're really excited to be back virtually with you for this, to kick off this series of topic meetings, which will be taking place on 4 of the next 5 Thursday evenings. We'll take a week off in between just to give people a break. So just a couple housekeeping items as we're getting started. First, this meeting is being recorded and will be posted online on the city's comprehensive plan webpage. So you can view that later on. Definitely share that with friends and neighbors who weren't able to participate so they can take a look at this. We ask that everybody please stay on mute during the presentation, and then as we move into breakout groups in the second part of the meeting, everyone will be unmuted and you can talk with each other then. So our agenda for tonight, we're going to start with just a brief presentation that kind of sets the stage for the rest of the meeting. We'll talk a little bit about what makes a successful downtown, generally speaking, and then looking specifically at Saco today and how sort of its role, Downtown Saco's role within the city. We'll talk a little bit about how downtown can help achieve our shared citywide goals. One of the things that we heard in the survey that took place in February was that downtown is something that a lot of people kind of mentally associate with the city, and it just, I think, speaks to its important role in the community. Then we'll have a brief Q&A before we move to a panel discussion. We have 2 guests from Saco to talk with us for a little bit tonight. And then the second half of the meeting, around 6:45 or so, we will break into small groups and discuss a couple of items. So looking forward to our time together tonight. So first, just a quick update on where we are in the project. When we first met back in January, we were in the community visioning phase. As I mentioned, during the month of February, we had an online survey and an interactive map that were available to people that helped us to develop a draft vision statement and guiding principles with the Long Range Planning Committee. I'll talk a little bit more about those a little bit later. And right now we're at the very beginning of our topic exploration phase, which will be in for the next couple of months, digging into the details of what will become the elements of the comprehensive plan. So tonight we're looking at downtown, and as you see on this next slide here, over the next few weeks we're going to talk together about mobility and transportation in Saco, housing and development, and then sustainability and resilience. And those are not all of the topics that are in the comprehensive plan, but those are some of the ones that kind of rose up to the top through our survey and at the first public meeting as things that we think are important for the future and that we want to be able to talk more about as a community. So our first topic tonight is, what makes a successful downtown? And I would like, before we jump in, to ask everybody to use the Zoom chat feature, which, at least for me, is at the bottom of my Zoom window. And we'd love to just hear from you in a couple of words in that chat box. When you think of a successful downtown, whether that is Main Street Saco or Portland or Boston or anywhere else, a successful downtown, in a couple of words, what is it that makes it successful to you? Is it the fact that it has great restaurants? Is it the fact that it has a park? It's easy to get to without needing a car, anything like that. Just type in the chat box. We'd love to get a sense from all of you, what is important to you? What do you think of when you think of a successful downtown? So we'll give just a couple, 30 seconds or so for that to come through. So some of the ones coming in, vibrant, human activity, appeal for all ages, friendly businesses, walkability, open spaces, being able to run your errands without moving your car, a variety of businesses. These are all great. Lots of people, kind of human activity, the people out and about. Spaces for lingering. Place that's visually appealing with well-lit streets, places for walking, local businesses, festive atmosphere year-round. Great, well, thank you. If you're still typing, please go ahead and send those in. But I think that's a great snapshot of some of the core elements of a successful downtown. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David Dixon to talk to us for a few minutes about just the bigger elements of a successful downtown. David?
Okay, thanks. And are you advancing my slides here, or these slides, I should say?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay, so I loved listening to all those the words you all just wrote, or many of you wrote, to your sense of what a great downtown is. If you look across the U.S. at particularly communities sort of like Saco, similar size, maybe similar in other ways, those words really resonate with what a lot of folks who do this for a living say. And to maybe the quickest way to put it is, in many ways, a really successful downtown today is one that does as many things as possible, represents a place that no matter who you are in your community, how old, what your income is, what your cultural background is, your race, your lifestyle, your preference, how you enjoy yourself, represents a place that you want to be, that basically in which you see yourself and would want to call it, and can call it mine. So in dumb, simple terms, it's a place where people live, work, and increasingly innovate. And I want to remind us all in this era of COVID, out of which we have not yet emerged, that while many folks may not be working in offices today, they're still working. So work can be about housing as well, attracting housing as well as offices to downtown. It's a place where people learn, and Saco, certainly Thornton Academy, but and the terrific schools you have in other ways are very much about downtown in that regard. It's a place where people play. The only comment I'd offer here is, we hope when we're all done that there'll be something even more fun than a parking lot to celebrate in, but you're adapting what you got, and that's great. And it's about community. And maybe today that more than anything means, as our society grows steadily more diverse, and again, that can mean race and income, cultural background, but very much increasingly age, particularly as we grow older, a great variety of cultural and lifestyle preferences, et cetera. It's a place that invites everybody to say, there's something for me down here. So that everybody comes together. It's sort of there's a natural invitation. Downtown is everyone's common ground. So moving forward here, I want to remind us of something we've talked about probably in every call, but it is the fundamental changes that we like to call the new norm 101 that are impacting every community. And these are not changes that inevitably shape our, let's say, these are not changes that tell us what kind of community we should have. They are changes that actually can provide tools as we manage them to create the community we want, downtown and all of Saco. So let me start with demographics. We are an aging society. Half our growth or more changes by region, but it's pretty similar across all regions. Going to be folks over 65 for the next 20 years. These are folks who by and large like living downtown, and they do not like living in a place they have to maintain. And they like to stay in the community in which they lived for many years, but with new housing options. Economic growth comes from a knowledge economy. That means attracting educated folks. Now, that sounds very elitist, but I will point out that each new knowledge industry job, and that means a job that requires higher education of some sort, which represents 90% of net new jobs in our world today and will for the next 20 years, but that each of these new jobs we create a number of other jobs. City of Buffalo estimates each new knowledge industry job creates 5 other jobs. These are often jobs that are disappearing and which are really important to replace. So if you create 5 new jobs for folks with a range of skills, 4 of those jobs may have disappeared in recent years. So it's all the more important to attract, to be able to create a robust economy that can create a variety of jobs, because it is rooted in the knowledge economy. And a knowledge economy, once again, is around talent, and talent these days is in scarce supply. They know it, and their decisions about where they want to live are based on lifestyle. We work in lots of places. I was fascinated by a survey that the City of Tampa, or the Tampa Downtown Partnership, finished recently, of folks who live and work downtown. And they particularly, what really stood out was, while maybe a third of the folks who live downtown lived there because their jobs were downtown, 85% of them lived downtown because of the lifestyle it offered. And this was the fastest growing segment of Tampa and any region's population. So even as fewer of us, work in a traditional office, in some ways that may enhance the appeal of downtown as a place to live and work, particularly for working at home. Mobility is changing. We won't talk a lot about that, but we're on the cusp of some dramatic changes in how we move around. I call them new mobility paradigms, connected mobility, autonomous mobility. All of those ultimately will actually be things that favor downtown, because what they will suggest is it's less about owning a car, more a click of a button, something shows up to pick you up and take you where you want to go. And it's about equity, because the probably hardest challenge our society, the challenge our society has the most trouble solving right now, is equity. All the things, in fact, that are going to make downtown more successful, demographic trends, importance of a knowledge economy, actually tend to make it more expensive. And we're going to have to try all the harder to make sure that everybody can not only live in downtown, but we give people the job training and workforce readiness so they can participate in the economic opportunities of downtown, anybody in Saco. So the pandemic has taught us some lessons. First of all, it has not changed the fundamental trends I just talked about at all. In fact, while there have been lots of sort of articles saying, gosh, people are leaving cities to go out and live in the suburbs or in the country, in fact, over the last year, urban housing prices have risen slightly faster than suburban prices, even this last year across 2020. And to be blunt, apartment rentals, city versus suburbs, have basically performed pretty much the way they did in the previous 2019, 18, and 17. There are a couple cities, New York, San Francisco, that people have moved out of because they were so expensive. But the fact that so little has changed really underlies the fundamental strength that cities like Saco, and particularly downtowns, have going forward. So maybe even augmenting those, people have demonstrated how much they love just being able to go out and walk. And that means a place to walk to. How much they value public spaces, access to nature, which Saco is rich in, increasing remote work, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to live in maybe the places they used to work. Adapting streets for outdoor dining has become tremendously popular. It's also accelerated challenges facing many small businesses and retail, particularly auto-oriented retail, but increasingly it is housing within walking distance. Ideally a 5-minute walk, quarter of a mile, that supports the ability to add new, particularly retail, food, coffee, beer, and to enhance the health of the businesses that are here. What has not changed? Well, it's the fundamental trends I talked about earlier, probably, which are in many ways hold a lot of promise for Saco. So we like to think of a downtown as the 5-minute downtown, the 10, maybe the 15 to 20-minute, probably should say downtown. When we think about whether we really like our neighborhood, we tend to think about, and downtown is a real neighborhood for folks who live there, how much can we reach within 5 minutes, a quarter-mile walk? And that really is food, coffee, beer, unique retail, parks, our friends, a sense of diversity, which people increasingly value, places to gather. And downtown has the potential to have more of all of these. Within 10 minutes, we want to be able to walk to a supermarket, drop our kids at daycare, go to school, get the services that we need. 15 to 20 minutes, and this can be back to 5 minutes on a bike, I want to note, access to jobs, major parks, the river, major gathering places. From these measures, downtown is again very well placed, downtown Saco in particular. So let's move on here. So I'm going to ask Phil to talk about, with this sort of larger perspective in mind, about downtown today. And this will help us think about the downtown we want tomorrow. Thanks. Look forward to your questions and thoughts and comments.
Thank you, David. And yes, if you do have questions during this, if you can just type those in the chat box. We'll try to take a couple minutes at the end to answer a few of those. And if we can't get to them all, we will, they'll be part of the post-meeting follow-up that'll be posted online. So looking specifically at downtown Saco today, and looking, when we talk about downtown, I think a lot of people in their head, rightfully think about that core of Main Street, sort of from Beach Street and North Street over to Saco Island and the river. But we're also thinking beyond that to include the neighborhoods of downtown. And this outline that you see here is what was identified as kind of the downtown focus area in the 2018 comprehensive plan update. So it includes Thornton Academy, goes all the way up to 195. So that's kind of the core here. And it's a great mix of retail, different types of housing, jobs, open spaces, obviously the river. So it has, pretty much everything you would want in a neighborhood or a community. And it's something that serves, not just the people who live and work there, but the entire city, and has a role within the region as well. So just kind of comparing that downtown area that I outlined on the previous slide to the city as a whole, you see that there are about 6,400 people who live here, about 2,600 people who work here. So that kind of contributes to the life of this area during the day, during the weekends and the evenings, so throughout the week, which is really important. As we start to look forward at anticipated changes over the next 5 years, population growth of downtown, is projected to be around 4%, and that's obviously based on a lot of assumptions that can change. But it's important that it's growing. More people are wanting to live in the types of places that David described, which is what downtown Saco is today. Looking how it compares to the city, while it's much smaller than 1/3 of the total land area, it has about 1/3 of the city's total population. It's also interesting to note that that area that I described before is significantly really younger than the overall median age of the city by almost 5 years. And it's also a smaller household size than the city. So what does that mean? It means it's more young professionals, it's more singles and couples, it's fewer, large families, but those people certainly do live down here as well. But that is kind of just, interesting. The role that downtown plays in the community is, partly driven by the type of people who live and work here as well. So we, over the last several months have been, talking to a number of different people. We've been, we had the survey available throughout February. We had the interactive map on the project website, looking at other major efforts like Bridge 2025. And we've heard a lot of common, shared interests in these opportunities that downtown offers. David had already mentioned sort of the importance of a gathering space for the community and an opportunity for that to be somewhere in that downtown area. Definitely an interest in support for more local restaurants, more local retail on Main Street. looking to find ways to reuse vacant upper floors, and that may well be housing to invite more people to live downtown. That kind of ties into the changing housing preferences that David touched on before. Also looking at how people get to and through downtown, finding ways to connect Main Street and downtown to Saco Island and downtown Biddeford. There's a project actually going on right now, the Biddeford Saco Transit Oriented Development, or TOD study, that the Regional Greater Portland Council of Governments is doing, that's actually looking at that very issue. People are also really interested, the Saco River is this great amenity and people want to be able to use it more. So there's a lot of interest in activating it with more events, easier to get to the river, even potentially opportunities for development in certain places along the river. And then connecting the Eastern Trail to downtown. That is a regional amenity for recreation, some for commuting, bringing that more into the core of the downtown area. And through that, same process, we've also heard about some of the challenges that downtown, faces, whether that's building condition in vacant properties or vacant upper stories. Certainly a perception of parking and traffic concerns in the downtown area, signage restrictions for businesses. So these are just some of the things that, we know we'll be looking to address through the comprehensive plan process. I want to close by, starting to think about how downtown can help achieve our shared goals for the city. And this is going to be one of the topics of our small group discussion. So as I'm going through this next set of slides, start to think a little bit about the role downtown plays in the broader city and how, changes downtown can help us achieve some of these shared goals. So this vision statement was posted online a couple weeks ago. It's the draft vision statement for the comprehensive plan that kind of emerged out of what we were hearing from the survey and the map and the public meeting over the last couple months. We worked with the long range planning committee to kind of refine this and try to get it right. And so I want to share that with you as sort of the overarching vision that's really going to be driving the comp plan moving forward. And it starts kind of succinctly with Saco, a community for a lifetime. There was, a lot of sentiment expressed in different ways that Saco is a place that offers something for everyone, no matter where you are in your life, whether you're a kid going to school, a young adult getting started, an older adult who may be raising a family or may not be, or, a retiree who's either spent their entire life here or discovered Saco later in life and just doesn't want to leave. This is a place that has something for everyone. And so to continue on with that, Saco is known as a welcoming small city, committed to managing its growth to build a better community for all and for a lifetime. As we grow, we continue to preserve our rich historic and natural legacy while celebrating our defining assets, a vibrant downtown, our cherished beaches, the Saco River, and our natural open spaces. So that's available on both the city's website and our interactive website. You can take a look at that on the website, learn a little bit more about where that kind of developed. But that'll be kind of guiding us. And to support the vision and how we will achieve the vision, we're proposing 9 guiding principles that support this. I won't read these all here because our next slides will talk a little bit more about downtown's role in helping to achieve them. But as we're developing the comprehensive plan over the next several months, we move from the vision at the top to our guiding principles, and then the strategies to help achieve those principles, and then the implementation activities that will make sure we can actually achieve these things. That's kind of the structure of the comprehensive plan. So again, as I go through these, start to think a little bit for yourself of how downtown can help achieve these overall principles. And you can discuss that as part of the small groups. But, our first is to enhance our downtown as a lively core of our community. That, as David said, is creating spaces for the community to gather, whether that's improving existing spaces or perhaps creating new ones. Those can be large ones or small places. It's also thinking about, what's called third places, kind of casual, informal meeting places like coffee shops, bars, playgrounds, where neighbors can meet and get together. And also thinking about the role of public art and how that can reflect the community and its history and its hopes for its future. Expanding economic opportunity for all. As David mentioned, the sectors where the economy and jobs are growing most are the types of jobs where workers are looking for jobs that have something more to offer, beyond just work. And downtown can be a great part of sort of the attraction for Saco businesses to help attract workers here. It's also a place where there can be an inclusive variety of jobs for everyone at different income and education levels, opportunity to gain skills and move up the ladder. All of that is, part of the role that downtown can play. It's also an important place to provide a variety of housing options. So in the context of sort of downtown, that core of Main Street, it's, looking at those vacant upper stories, looking at places where you could develop underused land, whether that's parking or vacant lots. And something we'll talk more about at a future meeting is this idea of missing middle housing types. So, something that's not a single family house and not an apartment in a big complex, but maybe is a 2 or a 4 unit house, or it's a 6 or 8 or 12 unit, larger building, but something that still really fits into the neighborhood. And, downtown already has a lot of those examples. So finding opportunities to encourage more of those. Again, how people move to and through downtown is really important. So thinking about those walking, biking, transit connections, and thinking about parking in the service of downtown goals. It's not necessarily an end to itself, but how can it help support the liveliness and vitality of downtown? How can it help support businesses and public spaces? Growing our environmental stewardship. The great thing about downtown, it's an established area. It has a lot of existing infrastructure. So encouraging, more people to live and work here is taking advantage, of that. It results in a lower carbon footprint. You don't have to get into your car every time you want to run an errand or go out to eat or go to a park or something. Promoting health and well-being, that's both physical activity, whether that's bringing the Eastern Trail into downtown, getting out on the river, but also kind of social and psychological, having places for community events so that people feel connected to their neighbors and to the community. Building resiliency, a lot of times people think about this as kind of environmental adaptation to a changing climate, but it's also being able to adapt to economic changes, having a more diversified job base. Changes in transportation that David mentioned, demographic changes that are changing how, we want to live and work and play. So downtown is a great place to, help accommodate all of that. Investing in our schools and our infrastructure, schools were something that we heard a lot of in the survey, and the school system is, actively working to make physical improvements, working with the state for that. In terms of infrastructure in the downtown area, it's really thinking about the public realm, the streets, the sidewalks, the lighting that people mentioned, public investments in parks and gathering spaces. It's also thinking about the connection between the fees that are charged for, kind of mundane but very important things like sewer and wastewater, and how that impacts the economics of redevelopment. So, all of these things that are sort of tied together in the downtown. And then finally, certainly last but not least, strengthening our city's fiscal position. Part of that, as I mentioned earlier, is just adding more residents and more jobs where the infrastructure already exists, where there already are streets and water and sewer and all of that. But it's also, experimenting in ways, that are quick, that are cheap, that are relatively easy to do. This picture here on the right, with paint, with some traffic cones, with some backyard furniture from Home Depot, some plants from the garden store. You can test out ideas like, how you treat your outdoor dining in the summer, how you can help shorten pedestrian crosswalks to get across the street. And that's a quick, easy way to test an idea for a couple days, a couple weeks, measure the impact, and then make any changes before the city goes and invests a lot of money to upgrade a sidewalk or change a street or something like that. So those types of ideas. So I'm going to take just a couple minutes, see if we had any questions that came through in the chat. There were first just a technical one, the TIF acronym, and back in the stats page, that's a tax increment finance district. So that same boundary that we were looking at for downtown also aligns with that. And that's kind of a funding tool to help projects in the downtown area to kind of get off the ground. And then it's a financing mechanism that then goes back into streets, sidewalks, public realm. There's a question about the new island development and how that may skew the downtown age average. What we have heard from some of the property owners on Saco Island and some of the apartments that are available there, that does definitely tend to skew younger, although they did say it's kind of an interesting mix of, young professionals and retirees, seniors who are looking to not have to take care of a house and a yard anymore. But not with a lot of kids. Typically, the young professionals are singles or couples, don't have a lot of kids out there. I see another question. Are missing middle housing types available for downtown development district assistance? That is a great question. I don't know the answer to that. So we'll look into that and post that as part of the post-meeting summary.
I'd be happy to participate in answering that question if this is appropriate. If not, I can wait till later.
Sure, actually, Denise, if you want to jump in, that'd be great.
All right. So currently under the TIF state statute, housing is not part of it. That said, actually, there's new legislation that's up for approval at the state to actually include affordable housing as part of downtown district TIF. And if that statute does get approved and changed, it's at the committee level right now. Yes, it would be an added addition to what's already supported by the downtown development district. But currently, it's not part of it.
Thank you, Denise. And I want to move to our next part of the presentation here, but just to read these last couple comments. Comment about having a deep concern regarding the huge amount of semi-truck traffic turning our downtown into a major shipping route, impacting quality of life. And so, how does, that's a great example of regional transportation and its impact on Saco, not just downtown, but certainly around the Turnpike interchange as well. Those are bigger regional issues that do have a real impact on quality of life in Saco. So with that, I want to move to the next portion of our evening here.
I'm sorry, I just want to,
sure.
I assume we'll also address that in the working session on transportation.
Yes, yeah, on our next meeting on mobility and transportation, we'll be looking at that among many other issues as well.
And I do want to note, there's one more question after that. What are plans for increasing traffic from all sources, including additional residents, and the folks who actually drive least in a community are the folks who live downtown, even when they don't work downtown, because so many more of the trips that they normally take are walkable. In fact, that's often a reason why they choose to live downtown. So the more growth, the larger share of Saco's growth that occurs in or close to downtown, the less traffic that will add. In terms of how to manage increasing traffic over the next 10 years, we will address that. And it's obviously a very appropriate question, an important question in the transportation working session coming up.
Mm-hmm. So with that, I want to take the next 10 minutes or so and invite two kind of guests from Saco who were gracious enough to join us tonight. Rob Biggs is the Executive Director of Saco Main Streets, and John Miley is a downtown property owner and developer. And we're excited to have them here with us. We just wanted to get a little bit more of a local perspective on downtown. So Rob and John, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I wanted to start with a question first to Rob. So if you can unmute yourself, Rob. As a executive director of Saco Main Streets, over the last year of COVID, there have obviously been a lot of changes, a lot of impacts. And I was wondering if you could just talk to us for a couple minutes about sort of how has downtown adapted and responded? How have the local businesses been faring? Just give us a little sense of what the past year has been like.
Well, thanks. It's a good question. A lot of changes certainly in our downtown from a perspective of COVID and how it was effective. We didn't see many events downtown last summer, certainly. But what we did see was kind of interesting how quickly some of our businesses pivoted and rebounded and created different opportunities to continue their business with restaurants that were going with online and curbside pickup was one that sort of popped up. The other thing that was kind of impressive in Saco by comparison to the other 9 main streets in the state of Maine was the amount of new businesses that opened. Many of our other main streets throughout Maine, from Skowhegan all the way down to Biddeford, Bath, and Brunswick, and so on, had either negative or almost neutral impact with regards to businesses, the amount that they lost as well as the amount that they picked up. In Saco's case, we actually had 2 that left, and we had 8 that have come in. 2 are not yet open, but they'll be open this month or this coming month. And 3 of them were restaurants and 1 is a bakery. And as I talked to some of my other executive directors throughout Maine, they're amazed that, who opens a restaurant during the pandemic. But we've got those, and they have opened up, and we've got businesses that are all ages opening, from our barbershop where they're both under the age of 30. And they popped up in Saco because they really thought that they had seen some excitement and some energy here and wanted to open up here. As far as the restaurants go, they just saw opportunities here that they felt things could work. A couple of them had started prior to the pandemic and just waited on in and said, what the heck, let's keep on going. The other thing that was interesting that I noticed on Facebook, we were watching the traffic where when Chase Bank announced that they were moving into Saco, there's a lot of angst that it wasn't going to be a Chipotle or another restaurant of some sort, which certainly we would like. But the statement that Chase, who's going to make an entry into Maine, picked 3 cities, 1 was Portland, 1 is Westbrook, and 1 is Saco, was pretty significant for, they don't just plop those down because it's the only empty building in the state of Maine. So, they picked Saco very, very deliberately, and it's interesting that they did. Beyond that, you mentioned public art in one of your earlier slides. It's one thing that I've really been hoping for, and we finally do have a public art commission that started up and starting to get some legs and really starting to work forward. And then we're going to see improvements as we've, both things that we've done during the pandemic, but things that we're coming out of the pandemic with regards to using some of those TIF funds in the downtown district to make some enhancements to our downtown. I mean, downtown isn't all of Saco, certainly, and I agree, and I am willing to help anywhere else in Saco, but at the same time, it is kind of the heartbeat. And my many years working with CB Richard Ellis, a large global corporate real estate firm, in helping companies select their next site. When a CEO was coming into a town, he didn't look and say, hey, we want to, let's go out to that site we're going to build at. They would usually typically want to drive through a downtown first and then see what the schools looked like, what parks looked like, and what other public investments had been made prior to deciding, well, this is the place we want to go to. And then lastly, I guess, and I'm sure John will talk about it a little bit more, but we have some vacant spaces in our 2nd and 3rd floors throughout our downtown. And currently they had been developed for office space, and some of the office was vacant pre-pandemic, some during the pandemic, but they're not going to be coming back. And I really do think that, and it would be great to see more. We talked about human activity as one of the things people like to see in their downtown. If we had more housing in those spaces where we already have infrastructure in place, it would be a great enhancement to our downtown. More people coming home to these apartments or condominiums, and then at night coming down into the restaurants and other shops that are available.
Great, thank you, Rob. And that's a great sort of segue to John. as a downtown property owner, developer, really curious about what is it that first attracted you to Saco? And maybe you can talk a little bit about your plans downtown, but, what was it, again, like Rob sort of alluded to, of all the places in Maine, why, the Saco area?
What I can say about that, I mean, you guys all covered it very well. We're attracted to the area for all of the above reasons. And people want to move here. What I can say is we're getting a lot of inquiries about apartments to the point where we're full, everyone we know is full, and we're looking to build more. The downtown is perfect for it. And, we're looking forward to redeveloping that building. It's a gorgeous older building. And as Rob mentioned, most of the vacancy was a pre-pandemic vacancy. I think just the downtown has been changing for a while. Office is not as popular. And so there's a huge demand for housing. So this was perfect.
Mm-hmm. And just when you were referring to the building downtown, for those who may not be familiar, where in downtown is that located?
Oh, sure. This is 146 Main Street. It's the Sweetser block. It's the last building, the large brick building before you get to the river.
Mm-hmm.
And we have retail shops in front. We have a few great little businesses there, and they've actually done very well to survive the pandemic with no assistance from us. They are very strong, and I highly recommend them to everybody. But yeah, we've done pretty well there, and I think everyone is happy with the location.
Mm-hmm. And then that is a great location, right on the river, just across the bridge from the transit center on Main Street. So being able to attract more people living there is, something that can help further support all the businesses there.
Yeah.
We have time, I think, just maybe for one more question before we get to the small groups. I want to make sure we have enough time for that. But for each of you, just very quickly in a minute or so, as the comprehensive plan, we're looking out over the next 10 to 15 years for to develop strategies that'll help us achieve that vision of Saco, a community for a lifetime. And so relative to kind of the role that downtown can play in that, I'll maybe start with Rob and then go to John. Just talk, one or two things that you think downtown can contribute to that citywide vision, something that you think is really important for the downtown to do over the next 10 to 15 years.
Good question. I think that as far as what the city can, or the downtown can contribute it's kind of like I said earlier, it's sort of the heartbeat of Saco. It's kind of the personality of Saco. Talked to a lot of folks that have moved here recently, and one of the reasons they moved was they had frankly, the reason we moved here 6 years ago was it had a real downtown that was kind of a working downtown. It wasn't just t-shirt and tourist shops, and it wasn't just businesses. It was kind of a blend. Would I like to see more restaurants? Sure. But at the same time, I think we've got a good blend of, you can get your haircut, get some insurance, you can buy some gifts and have dinner and do it all in one spot. And I think that it's the kind of place that when you walk through the downtown, you see your neighbor across the street, you get to run into people and that really kind of gives the personality of Saco versus, say, and I don't want to pick on them, but versus the Scarborough that doesn't have a main street and doesn't have that kind of personality. They sort of have Route 1 and the shopping along Route 1. So that's kind of my vision there. I do have one answer for Marshall with regards to his question on the development on the island and what that did to as far as the age and the demographics. It's about a 60-40 split where 40% is over 50 and 60% would be, say, under 35.
Okay, thank you. The condos and the apartments, do you happen to have the data on that? Because I would suggest the condo owners are probably on the older side. Would that be correct?
Yeah, the
Okay.
condo, that building and where the condos are, the Saco Island Terrace is, yes, it's definitely an older
Okay.
group. By comparison to the mill, mill building 4 is, like I said, more of a 60-40 split there.
Gotcha.
And John, could you kind of give us your thoughts on, downtown's role in achieving that overall vision and what you would most like to see happen in the next 10 to 15 years downtown?
Oh, geez. Well, I thought an earlier comment was made about truck traffic, semi-truck traffic coming probably down Elm Street. I don't think there's anything coming down Main. But I think that was a good point. That should be looked at maybe or thought about. And then also that connection into Biddeford across the river over the train tracks. Maybe that should be thought about as well for the long term. I can see that becoming a choke point. I just don't know I have no idea for a suggestion. But specifically, those are two things maybe that are on my mind. Other than that, I can't, in specific terms, think of something right now.
Great. I think that idea of connecting, Biddeford and the island and Saco together and how people move to and through downtown is definitely an important one. So with that, I want to wrap this segment up and thank Rob and John for your perspectives. We really appreciate it. And next up on our agenda is to hear from all of you. So in just a minute or so here, we're going to move into breakout groups. I believe we'll have 3 different groups and want to spend the next 30 minutes or so until about 7:20, talking together about downtown, kind of its role in the city. So what we're asking each of the breakout groups to do, you'll have a facilitator who will be in each of the groups to kind of help guide this discussion and take notes. But of that list of 9 citywide guiding principles, choose 3 of those. You'll have those up on the screen when you get to the small group. But choose 3 of those to kind of discuss as a group, spend 5 or, maybe a little less than 10 minutes on each one and just kind of brainstorm ways that downtown can help achieve that goal, whether it's, the economy, environmental sustainability, downtown as the community core, whichever 3 you'd pick as a group, kind of have a discussion around that. And then in the last 5 minutes, identify out of what you discussed, identify the top 3 kind of shared priorities for the group based on, drawing from what you had already discussed. And that can be, 1 priority for each guiding principle that you chose to talk about, or all 3 can be in 1 guiding principle. It's, up to you to decide. But that's what we're looking for. You'll have a 5-minute warning at 7:15 from Isabel, just to begin to wrap things up. And then at 7:20, we will come back to the main room here. For those of you who have done breakout groups before, you do know that transition can be kind of abrupt. So Isabel will give everybody a minute warning as well. And then we'll come back. And then we'll just close the meeting and ask to get a quick recap from each of the small groups. So with that, Isabel, if you want to send us to our small groups, we should be moving there in just a minute. So thank you very much and look forward to talking to you in the small groups. hope everyone had good conversations in their small group. We are going to wrap up in the next 5 or 10 minutes here. And I'd like to just hear quickly from each of the small groups, just, kind of what are the 3 principles that your group chose to discuss? And then, briefly describe what are the top 2 or 3 shared priorities you came up with. So I'm going to look to our planned facilitators. Justin, could you give us a quick snapshot of what your group discussed?
Sure. Okay. So, hey, Phil. So our group, in terms of the overarching principles, talked about the lively core being the top focus, really needing to attract folks, creating sort of a hustle and bustle atmosphere. We also talked about the need for connectivity in terms of mobility, and particularly zeroing in on biking and trying to access the downtown from a lot of different modalities. We also talked about the need for potential repurposing for housing in the downtown, and then how that plays a role into the fiscal position for the community. So we kind of snuck in a 4th one just for fun.
That works. We will certainly allow it. Well, that's great. Thank you very much. Sounds like you had a good conversation in that group. Bob, I believe you were facilitator number 2. You can give us a recap of your group.
There we go. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, we had after a couple of drinks, everybody was just yakking away. It was great. Let me see. We too went with 4 principles: the economic opportunity, housing options, environmental stewardship, and investing in schools and infrastructure. Particularly with the environmental, the Saco River was cited, as well as the nearby proximity to the Eastern Trail. In terms of dense housing options, greater density, and as was presented earlier by you folks, Phil, the notion of identifying those 3- and 4-story buildings downtown that have underutilized 3rd and 4th stories that perhaps could be converted from empty office space to residential dwellings. I think the young lady who brought up infrastructure, another one of our topics, she often puts the kids to bed and lives in the downtown area, then goes for a walk. She finds herself gravitating to walking on streets in Biddeford because they are well lighted. And she finds here in Saco, as soon as you get away from Main Street, the side streets tend to be underlighted. So simply put, she feels safer in downtown Biddeford after dark. As far as other, and Denise, I thought, made a great point. A few of us, and we need to circulate this article, it was right on point. A few weeks ago, one of our members circulated an article that spoke about, simply put, I guess, women feeling safe in downtowns. And the observation about lighting in Saco's downtown was right on point with the point made in that article. Yeah, we got back a little bit to the downtown in terms of what can we do to improve the notion of housing and to encouraging economic development. One would be to take a look at the, in particular, the CSO and sewer impact fees that tend to act as a disincentive currently, particularly for restaurants in the downtown. And also a transfer of development rights program was mentioned. So that's a quick overview at what we discussed.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. And then I worked with our 3rd breakout group. we decided to talk about the downtown core, providing economic opportunity for all, and schools and infrastructure as well. I think one of the big conversation points we spent some time talking about was the need for gathering spaces downtown, and particularly for large groups. You know, people mentioned, you know, the library concerts are, you know, great, but the space there is kind of small and it can be hard to even hear the music sometimes because of the proximity to Route 1. You know, so that was given as an example where, you know, if there was a larger space to have that concert, it might be a gathering opportunity for the community. And, you know, we also talked about the creating places for people of different generations to just casually run into each other, build, you know, a sense of community, build a sense of trust. So that was a really interesting discussion and points around gathering spaces for the community downtown. Second one we talked about was the riverfront and accessibility to that. Thinking of that both as a, you know, whether it's an economic opportunity to host events down along the riverfront that then attract people to, you know, the businesses downtown, or, you know, from an infrastructure standpoint, making sure it's accessible to all. And then I think the final point was just kind of thinking about the schools downtown from two directions. One, whether the existing schools can take better advantage of being close to downtown, but then also thinking to planning for the new school location, and whether, you know, depending what happens with that, whether there, you know, is an opportunity to reuse one of the existing school sites for open space downtown, or whether to actually locate the new school in downtown and bring people down. So there's a conversation around that. So that sounds like there was some great conversations in our small group, and really want to thank everybody for participating in that. We are coming up to 7:30. I just want to wrap up here. Remind everyone again, we have 3 meetings coming up. Next one is next Thursday night, same time, 6 o'clock. That one will be focused on mobility and transportation citywide. Then we'll take a week off and come back on May 13th to talk about housing and development. And then on May 20th, we will close with sustainability and resilience. So I would encourage all of you to attend any or all of these if you can, and just keep helping us get the word out. You know, let your friends and neighbors know, you know, share the meeting links. We'd always want to hear from as many people as we can. This is the link to our website. This is, you know, where we'll have updates on the meetings. You can also check back here for the video of this and the upcoming meetings, post-meeting summary, and then also has a link to our interactive website as well. So with that, I want to thank our guests, Rob and John, for participating and giving us a local perspective on downtown Saco. I want to thank everybody for participating in our small groups tonight, and look forward to seeing all of you next Thursday at 6 o'clock for that conversation about transportation and mobility. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.